Peace and blessings, family, and welcome back to another episode of Heal with Angelica Waters podcast, where we discuss all things healing. And on today's episode, I have a guest joining me today, Miss Ashley Browning, entrepreneur, author, and self care strategist, as we will be discussing today's topic, Love Thyself. Ashley, I am so excited to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for joining me. How are you?
I am fine. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yes, yes, thank you again. This is so awesome. Now, before we get started, Ashley, do you mind letting our audience know a little more about you?
As she said, my name is Ashley Browning. I am a self care strategist. I actually have a background in counseling, rehab counseling, and so I've been in the field of human services since about 2009. And I realized that a lot of people have been suffering mainly because the lack of self care. So that has really what put me into the mode of working more with self care, self love, meditation, and mindfulness.
Amazing. I love that. Yes, yes. Now, let's get started on today's topic, Love Thyself. Now, Ashley, I understand that self care and self love is more than a priority to you, it is a lifestyle. Now, to those who don't know or understand, could you explain what is self love?
Self love to me is loving you completely, all of you, your flaws and all, even the parts that you don't like, you still love them. And that is basically the basis of how you can take care of yourself the best is when you truly love yourself.
I love that. Amazing. So, Ashley, I saw in your bio you started a nonprofit organization, Soul Love, in 2013. And that was for the vulnerable, the underserved
Uh-huh.
and forgotten, including in 2018, Self Care Ain't Selfish, and
Yeah.
which was birthed out of a need to promote wholeness, awareness, and education around self love. Now, I would love to know, like, what motivated you to start your nonprofit organization and what started your healing journey?
So I started my nonprofit, like you said, in 2013. I had just recently moved back to Dayton, Ohio. I was in Kentucky for 8 years. And then when I got back here, I realized there were some gap in services. So a lot of people were in crisis mode, but they had to go through loops and hoops to get some things that they needed. So that's how Soul Love was kind of birthed. It's a platform to let people know that I love you, we love you, and Jesus loves you most importantly, right? So that is how that posts. So our foundational scripture is John 3:16. For God so loved the world. So that's why we go by so loved. Um, so then fast forward, I think love has always been the basis of everything that I do. So now we know that, through so love, we know that we love you, that Jesus love you. So now let's work on ourselves, because it's not enough to know that somebody else loves you. You have to know and love yourself for yourself, right? So self-care and selfish, I started with two co-owners, and we started this as a way to give back and reach back into women of color who needed transparent gathering, pretty much. So we was a way for us to be all in a room together and share and be able to release. So that started, my journey started around 2018, about self care and self love, and just really tapping into who I was and tapping into the love that I had for myself. And so I wanted to be an example to other women who look like me to know that I ain't got it all together, but I'm on a journey with you all, and let's get this thing together and let's get it right. So that brings me to present day, where I have now morphed into doing self care coaching for women of color primarily, but Black people in general, or Black and Brown people in general. I want people to know that. you can take care of yourself and it's okay and it's not selfish.
Wow, I love that story, sis. That was beautiful. Yes.
Thank you, sis.
Yes, yes, yes. So, as I was going into through my, I guess, self love, healing, self care journey, I realized that I didn't really even know what self love really was, or even if I was loving myself correctly. So, like, do you believe, like, as a whole collective, like, do we know how to love ourselves
Well,
properly?
I would say that I just can only speak from a black lens.
Yeah.
So I would say from love is taught, and I don't know how often prior to our current generation, so the millennials and the Gen Zs are getting it. But prior, I don't know if our mothers and our grandmothers was able to stand in love. We knew they loved us and they loved us by providing for us, but I think we needed a little bit more as to actually showing us, telling us, I know I didn't get told I love you from my parent until I probably was headed to college. So, mothers are now more conscious about telling their kids, I love you. So like when you have that example at home, I think it morphs into, who you are as an adult. I think that also, um, our parents wasn't taught what love was. So it's a generational thing about what love is. I know in my family and my family unit, we have been taught that gifts is love. So I had to change that perspective for me. So like I know gifts are love language, but it's definitely not my love language
Yeah.
because I would rather know than be given a gift. So sometimes we do other things to show love, which is fine, but we have to figure out how individuals want to be loved. So just because you may want to be loved with gifts doesn't mean that somebody else may be physical touch or whatever. And kids have love languages as well. So realizing what those love languages are and how you can meet people in their love language, I think is the way to kind of bridge that gap between what love is and I think that we have to understand that love is like a vast thing. So it's not just one way to love somebody. And it's a difference between I love you and unconditional love. So figuring out what the unconditional piece looks like. And that is, like I said, loving yourself regardless and in spite of. So that's where I want to get people to get to the place where, I love myself. Even though I want to lose 20 pounds, I still love all of me how I am right now.
I love that. That just sounds like, just embracing and appreciating who you are right now, even through whatever it is that you may be going through. So I
Hmm.
love that. Yes. So what now I also want to know, like, why is having a self-care routine important?
I think for me, I think self care is important because it's self preservation. And we know that people are dying younger and younger, right? So to prevent, we have to do our part. Of course, we all know we have a death time and a death date, but let's not, accelerate the process by doing something that we could prevent. So for me, I think self care is a necessity because it puts you in your holistic self in mind. So that's mind, body, and soul. And it's all taken into account about how you feel. And if we check in with ourselves more often, I think that would alleviate us from high blood pressure, alleviate the stress, alleviate the heart attacks and the strokes and the diabetes and all of that kind of stuff. So really check in and say, how are you feeling today? How do you feel mind, body, and soul? So allowing yourself to even sit in your feelings and know what that even means.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. So, what would be, I guess I can say, what would be the first steps to start implementing self love and self care?
I would definitely start with journaling. I think that you can, if it's focused on self love, I would write everything that you love about yourself and everything that you want to work on the other side of the sheet of paper. And every day you focus on one thing that you love about yourself and how can you better make it implement that strategy into making it a strength and not a weakness or whatever it may be. So journaling, I think, is a good place to start. In those daily affirmations and those positive affirmations, basically just speaking positively over yourself and bringing down anything that comes negative to your mind, like being able to quickly throw it down,
Yeah.
to be able to change that into a negative thought into a positive thought. A thought.
Exactly, exactly. I know that I had to basically get myself in the rhythm of being consistent in doing it. Um, because, we can say we want to do something, but we do it for like a day or two and then just stop.
Hmm.
So, like, what advice do you give for somebody who, like, starts on a path of loving their self and doing self care, but end up getting, I guess, disappointed or discouraged and just stop doing it? Like, what advice to keep going in that journey?
Well, you right. You just basically gave the advice to keep going.
Oh, did
Like, don't stop, right? So you want
yeah.
to make sure, because nobody is perfect, and I
Yeah.
think a lot of people we also will struggle with discipline and consistency. So being able to celebrate yourself in that you did it for 10 minutes a day, 5 days. So be able to celebrate yourself in those milestones to say, I was consistent enough to do it for this amount of time. And if you stop, just pick it back up. Don't just like you said, keep going. And like I said, get you a pattern or a routine. We all know 21 days build a habit. So if you can't get to 21 days, at least get to that 7 days. Then you can get to those 21 days. So just pacing yourself out and making sure you're taking your time to get to the time, that 21-day habit. And then you make it a daily routine.
I love it. I love it. So you've been on this journey for a while. Like, so how can you say that implementing self care and self love benefited your life? Like, what have you gotten out of just doing it?
Good question. I think that like when I really started to focus on me, it was like a life changing experience. And what I mean by that, it was like I'm my own competition. Um, the only person that can stop me literally is me. So I've been able to be from a place of, as you say, healing. And for me, I look at it as freedom. So I'm operating at a place of complete freedom. And of course, we all struggle with living in truth sometime. And so being able to live in your truth, being exactly who you are, not who your mom wants you to be, not who your dad wants you to be, not who your family wants you to be, but being exactly who you are and doing exactly what you want to do is probably one of the best things that you could ever do. So being in a career, being a business owner, whatever you want to do, be free and be exactly who you are. Life is too short to just be doing whatever. So whatever makes you happy, do it. So like I said, it's a place of complete freedom and being able to know my boundaries, being able to know what my standard is, and being able to know that I'm not settling for less has been a complete game changer.
Yes, it's definitely a game changer. Like, I'm so glad that um as you was explaining that, like you said, it's freedom, and it really is. Like, you it's like it's like a high, like just knowing that you're loving yourself and you're putting yourself first is like
Hmm.
the ultimate bliss. Like, so I
Yeah,
love
and it's no guilt and there's no shame around it. Like it's okay to say no. It's okay to be like, no, and I'm sitting on my couch, but I'm saying no to you because I want to sit on my couch and not do
Okay.
nothing. Yeah.
Exactly, exactly. So I can honestly say that it has definitely been a lot of I guess, with everything going on this past year or two, a lot of anxiety and depression. Now, do you believe that the lack of self care and self love plays a part in the increase of anxiety and depression? If so, why?
I think that we all have a spectrum of mental health, and I think that whatever you feed the most is what you will put, what gets fed the most, and what comes out, right? So I
Mm-hmm.
also believe that with anxiety and depression, I do think those are medically diagnosed mental health symptoms and diagnoses, right? But I also think that we can, if we put more time into ourselves and not focus on outside um, external things, that we can probably prevent some of that anxiety. Because if you are checking in with yourself, you'll be able to know, okay, my anxiety is not doing well, or I'm not feeling the best. So how do I, you know, do I need to go see my therapist? Do I need to check in with my mentor? So those check-ins are very important in helping with the anxiety and depression, because you'll know which steps to take if you're able to check in with yourself daily, to be able to say, something is off, but I'm not quite sure what it was. I'm gonna schedule me a therapy appointment, or I'm gonna call my best friend, or I'm gonna do whatever you need to do to make yourself better.
Yes, exactly. Just having that self awareness, as you
Hmm.
said, to know that, okay, I need to check in with myself. Something is off. What's going on? Going back to reassuring yourself that, everything is okay once you sound like to me, once you know yourself, you're able to really do that and tap in. I
Right.
like that. Yes. So I see you are also a sexual health advocate as well. Now, why is sexual health important when it comes to self love and self care?
So for me, I think those two kind of go hand in hand.
Okay.
So I think that for self love, if you love yourself, like I said, the standard has already been set. So now that the standard is set, you know what you will accept and not accept. And that will be in relationships, that could be in sexual relationships, that could be how you care for yourself. So your overall self. And when we think about sexual health, we think about making sure that you are protecting yourself the best way you know how, and making sure that you are safe in all possible situations. So I think that self love and self sexual health kind of go hand in hand. And we know that sexual health is a taboo thing, um,
Mm-hmm.
because we don't want to talk about sex, but we all got here some type of way, right?
Exactly.
So,
Yes.
so I think that, just having an education around what that looks like. So, like I said, my focus is primarily African American women, especially in that arena of sexual health. In my current field, I am a project manager over a grant where we work with 18 to 24-year-olds, where we teach them about sexual health and substance abuse um, prevention, because we are African Americans are number one for STDs and HIV. So I want to be able to give that education and be able to lend that ear for others to be able to know, like, we can protect ourselves. Sex
Mm-hmm.
is something that is beautiful, something that it should be fun. It should be nothing, no shame or no guilt behind it. But while you in there, let's protect yourself, and let me show you how we can, get to that point where we're able to say no, and this is what I like, and this is what I don't like, and this is what I want you to do, and this is not what I want you to do. So being able to have that voice in that space.
Exactly, exactly. I love that. Now, since we're on this topic, and I can definitely bear witness, now there's a lot of females. I'll just say just women in general, who, how can I say this? We overgive,
Hmm.
and we overgive in relationships a lot, to the point where we forget ourselves. Now, for our women, this is mostly for women, our men too, but like for our women, like, what advice would you give a woman who is in a relationship, um, but still wants to practice that self love and self care within that relationship.
I think that that's all based on boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to use your voice and say, this is what I want and this is what I don't want. This is my self care day. Leave me alone during this time. So being able to set those boundaries within your relationship, to be able to say, this is, what I want. And I think that we have to set a standard. And like, we know that we are in an era of Netflix and chilling, right? So we know that if that's not your standard, don't go for it. Don't even start in that arena, because now you're gonna be looking like, well, all he want to do is come over and Netflix and chill. Well, you already set the tone.
There you
So why
go.
does he want to? Why would he want to date you now when he didn't have to date you in the beginning?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to set the standard up front, like if you want him to call you, or you want him to text you, or you want him to date you, set the standard. Tell him, this is what I want and these are my expectations, and or set her, whoever your partner may be. So you got to literally set the standard up front, and being able to set those boundaries and being able to implement boundaries when things change, because things will change.
Mm-hmm.
And being able to say, all right, no, I'm seeing something I don't like here,
Yeah.
or this is, I'm not comfortable with this, or I would like it if we can compromise in this area. So being able to use our voice and being able to communicate, we know communication is the most effective tool that we have. So being able to literally use your voice, set those boundaries, put you first and not the relationship, and then
Yeah.
everything else will go into come into play.
Ah, I love that response, sis. Yes, yes. Thank you for that advice. I needed it. Thank you, thank you.
Good question, then. I'm glad you asked.
Yeah, honestly, I was like, it's just what you were talking about. Like, oh my gosh, I just had to ask. Like, yeah, so perfect question for our ladies and great response as well. So thank you for that. Now, what advice do you have for anyone who is wanting to learn how to love themselves but are having a hard time doing so?
I would, I always say that it's all about time, and it's about how you set your time. So like for people who have kids, making sure that you set those boundaries like set them boundaries even with your kids. So if you have a bedtime for your kids at 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock, whatever the bedtime may be, making sure that you do that, because you're honoring not only discipline and structure for your kids, but now you're honoring time for you to be able to unwind at least an hour or two before it's time for you to go to bed. So being able to literally implement a schedule, I think is probably the best way to start. Is to say, say if you work, so if you at work, 5 minutes a day, I'm gonna read my favorite passage or listen to my favorite song, or that can be somewhere you can start, or deep breathing throughout the day. So literally writing into a schedule self care and self love, journaling, meditation, all of that kind of stuff, like putting that into your day.
I love that. That is exactly what I do. I notice that if I don't have a schedule or if I'm not like like implementing that within my day, like I'm kind of everywhere and it kind of gets me off track. But just knowing that you have a schedule, you're writing it down and you're being kind of organized, you're able to get a lot of things done. You're able to put in time for self-care and self-love when you do that as well, especially when you got a lot going on with children and working and stuff like that. So that was an amazing response, sis. I love that. Thank
Yeah,
you, thank
I would just say
you.
definitely use that schedule, and put that into play. And of course, when you get into routine, it just becomes a habit. But at first, use that schedule.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Now, I have one more question for you before we end today's show, love. Now, what are some self-care self-care things that, we can do?
I would say, so there are 8 components of self care.
Mhm.
I have those on my website. You can check those out. But I would say focus on one of the components. That would be one thing that I would suggest. And the next thing I would say is, do what you enjoy. So for me, I'm a person who likes to be in nature, right? Not like in the woods or nothing, but like outside, right?
Yeah.
So I have to honor myself and being able to be outside. And if that's just taking a walk or going for a bike ride or something like that. So some of the things that you can do is, of course, we know exercise, being able to journal, meditate, being able to connect with your therapist, being able to hang out with friends,
Mhm.
social, that is one of the components, financial self care, being able to have a budget, being able to manage money,
Yes.
like that is a part of also your whole self. So those are some things. I actually have some free things as well on my site, which include music. We have some coloring pages. We also have a calendar, which is a daily thing that you can do that you can take 5 minutes to be able to do. And also, you can do. I have a actually another self care calendar as well on there, so you can be able to write down things that you can do, like drink your water, making sure that you eating healthy and stuff like that, because you're going to take that all into consideration when you're thinking about the holistic part of you. So self care can be anything from, I know a lot of times we make it an activity based, but it's really
Mhm.
not activity based because a lot of things that we do for self care is maintenance. Um,
Yeah.
so more so like self care is more so like your soul care. Like what can you do to make you a better person? So if that is working out, if that is, studying for your next test or whatever, like whatever is making you the best version of you, that is what self care is.
Ooh, I love that. You are definitely a strategist, okay? I love that. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yes, yes. So, thank you again for joining me, Ashley, and discussing today's powerful topic, love thyself. I will also like to give a special thank you to my amazing audience and healing tribe for joining us today. I pray today's episode was informative and valuable to you all. Also, be sure to give us a feedback, share, and subscribe on any of your favorite podcast stations and or on my YouTube channel, Heal with Angelica Waters Podcast. Also, check out my ebooks on health and wellness and many merch like our Eat to Live and Heaven Equal Woman teas listed in the link in the description. I will also include guest information where you can follow up and reach out to my special guests. Miss Ashley Browning. Her website is amazing. Definitely go there, you guys. If you guys want to get some self care tips, anything, it's beautiful. I love it.
Thank you.
Yes. So Ashley, before we end today's show, do you have any closing remarks for our audience today?
And I just want to say, make sure that you are selfish, and it's not a negative thing. Be selfish with yourself, and knowing that it's okay to take care of yourself first. So my slogan is self care ain't selfish. So making sure you know that, and don't have any guilt or shame surrounding that, and just be selfish.
Yes, to say be selfish is okay.
It's
Okay. I
okay.
literally had to learn that like it's really okay to say no. And I'm sorry, I'm gonna end off with that because I see, we can sometimes be people pleasers. And I was like, wow, I please a lot of people but myself. So
Mhm.
let's go ahead and reevaluate that. So I love it, sis. Thank you so much again.
Thank
And
you.
thank you all again for joining us today. And we leave you all as we came. Peace and blessings.